Bonjour, Natalie here. Welcome to FrancoFoods. Today, I'm making a bakery staple, donuts. There are several recipes for dough. I'm sticking to the leavened recipe. It requires a little more time than without yeast, but in my opinion, the result is worth it. To start, I'm preparing the dough. I do have a recipe that I've successfully used in the past, but I just can't find it. So I searched online and found one that seems similar, so I should be fine. This is not my first rodeo. Mixing in the yeast dry is a different technique than what I'm used to, but it should be a rich, sweet dough nonetheless. I'm incorporating the flour slowly to not have any lumps. It does make a rather sticky dough. So I've been wondering, where do donuts come from? When were they invented? Well, it's not as easy to figure out as you might think. There's nothing really specific with the information. It's not like a treasure map and X marks the spot. But there have been mentions of breads and doughs fried in oil as far as the time of the pharaohs. Okay, I have a nice soft ball of dough. Time for the first rise. I'll set it aside for about 1.5 to 2 hours until it doubles in size. Well, it's been a good 2 hours and the dough just has barely risen. Yeah, it's not springy at all. It feels nice, but it's like the yeast didn't activate. Okay, well, I'll give it a whirl and we'll see how it turns out. Regardless of where the donut's ancestors started, the explosion of what became the donut we know today, that happened in the United States. But how did it get here? So the story goes that Dutch immigrants brought the fried treats with them to the New World in the 1700s. They called them oliekoek. Eventually, those cakes evolved into today's donuts. Now, I don't have a donut cutter. You can get one of those where the center and the outer rim is all connected. I'm just going to use 2 different sized cutters to shape the donuts. As a kid, I remember my mom. She would use a glass, usually a wine glass because the edge was thinner, to shape the donut. And for the hole, she would use a thimble. We all loved snacking on those tiny trous de beigne. Time for the second rise. Now, the donuts should fluff up and double in size. Okay, well, the donuts have not risen at all. Well, let's see how they fry up. The color's nice. They are quite heavy though, and super dense. Well, they taste really bland and not sweet at all. I am not happy with these donuts. I'm not going to spend more time on these. So, I tried the same recipe a second time. Result was the same. I thought there might be something wrong with the yeast I'm using, so I tested it. I tried activating it by putting it in warm water, and it frothed up nicely. Nothing wrong with my yeast. So I went through the comments on the site where I got the recipe, and quite bluntly, it's not a good recipe. Many people commenting had the same result. Those who did have success, they did so by first activating the yeast in water and then following the rest. So it happens that I have brioche dough in my freezer from a batch that I made a couple of weeks ago. So that's what I'm going to use. Now, during World War I, Salvation Army volunteers gave donuts to American soldiers who were serving in France for a little taste of home. Then, during the Second World War, it was the American Red Cross volunteers who did the same. In both cases, when these soldiers came back home, they wanted more of that comfort food they enjoyed. A food trend was born. So the brioche dough is very cold still, and that's why it looks hard, but it should lighten up as the donuts rise up. I hope. Okay, I know square donuts are funky, but frankly, I don't want to waste anything after chucking 2 batches already. So I'm going to make regular donuts, the ones with the hole in the middle, but I'm also going to make some filled donuts. Time to let the donuts rise. Fingers crossed. Today's vocab is la friteuse, la pâtisserie, Je te retrouve au café. Je prends mon café avec de la crème et du sucre. Yes! The donuts have risen. Time to fry them up. Look at that. They're puffing up as they fry, as they should. Now that's encouraging. Taste test. Yep, this is really good. They're light and fluffy and yummy. Okay, let's keep going. These are big donuts. Okay, now for the glazes. I'm going to make that while the donuts are cooling. For the filled donuts, I'm making my favorite, which is Boston cream. For the glazed donuts, it's going to be a maple glaze. Here we go. Okay, the maple glaze is a little too thin, so I'm just going to add some extra powdered sugar. It's all part of the fun, folks. Ah, yes, there we go. Now that's perfect. Finally, I have donuts. Now for the Boston cream. The filling is simply a vanilla cream pat or crème pâtissière. Although you can get a special tool for filling, I'm using my piping bag with a tip and it works just fine. Well, once I cut a slit for the tip to go through. Okay, so using the brioche dough worked well for the regular donuts. Not so much for the filled ones though. The texture is light and you can taste the sweet butter in the dough. It's quite good to taste the Boston cream. So here you have it. I gave it my best try. I learned a lot during this donut escapade, but it's definitely not my best. I'll try again another time, but for now, merci et à la prochaine.